Hello and welcome back to Healing the Healer, the series. The method of New Age healing that we are covering today is still focused on storytelling. We have with us today two lovely ladies that I met on social media, and we're going to be looking at a very sensitive topic, and I'm nervous about it. I really am. I think in all the other episodes that I have recorded, I've never been this nervous to talk about a particular topic. We have with us Busisekile Khumalo and Thuli Mazwi, who met through social media. I think in the previous episodes you would have noted that most of my guests are people that I've met via social media, but we'll talk about that much later. For now, the focus is Busisekile Khumalo's latest book, which is The Princess and the Piper.
The Innocence of the Virgin.
And it touches on healing sexual trauma. And part of a conversation with Thuli gave her input into the story that she tells in her published book. Today, they're here to tell you their story. So ladies, welcome to Healing the Healer, the series. Take me through your story first before we get to the actual touchy, sensitive topic.
I'll say thank you for having us. Busisekile Khumalo. Who am I?
Who are you? I think I actually shouldn't still be using Busisekile Khumalo since now she's become a Mrs. But yes, for the sake of the people that know you, so they can easily identify you, we'll keep to Busisekile Khumalo. Who are you?
I think I'm a writer, first and foremost, and it's taken a while actually for me to actually accept that this is who I am, that I bleed on paper, that I heal through words, not just other people but myself as well.
Yes.
So I think because I think one of the things that drew me to Thuli, okay, now so she always says this, that my books are in the wrong genres, like, because there's no genre called healing, you know.
Yes.
Because whatever story I tell, even if it's a love interest or even if it's fiction, but there's some sort of healing, some sort of transformation there.
I agree.
So I'm a writer. I'm also a mother to one very bubbly terrorist who's fortunately asleep now. And I'm an activist, a human rights activist. I studied law. I'm a wife, a new wife.
Hey, I've been waiting for that. Show my hand.
A mother, a daughter, a sister, a friend, I'm so many things. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Lovely to have you. Thank you for joining us. Thuli, take us through your story.
Okay, so apologies for how I look right now.
Oh,
but,
woman. If you embody it, you can sell it. Listen, I've been selling heaven to everybody, and they've gotten to a point where they don't get so shocked.
Okay, so this is my rugged, I'm owning my rugged working from home look. Yeah, for the last 2 years. Anyway, so my name is Thuli Mazwi, has already been mentioned, and I am Busisekile's friend.
Yes.
And oddly enough, we met on social media and we've never met in person yet.
Oh, yeah?
And the reason why I guess we collided on social media and we then stayed in touch since, I was in a season, I guess, where I'm an avid reader, but I was looking for some light reading that doesn't require a lot of invested emotions, a lot of brain power, heart power, I just wanted to read to be entertained, because the rest of my life at that time was exhausting. And I came across a lot of books on Facebook, and with these books were quite was quite fascinated. The first of her books that I read was Her Silent Screams.
Yes.
And I just thought, that's a very different book. That's a very different set of characters. I've never, and it's so well researched. I wonder if she's, if she's Asian. I wonder if she's got, and I started following her. And then I think one day I slid into her DMs I can't remember why. I slid into her DMs and she responded, and we kept in touch. And I think I wanted to buy the Harvard Wife when it came out, and ever since I happened to buy about 5 copies of each of her books to give away to friends, etc.
Yes.
So who am I? I am an avid reader, as I've already said. I'm a very enthusiastic learner. I'd say I'm an explorer in life. I explore things. And
yes.
I started a blog a couple of years ago, and the blog was to focus on my career and where I was going and the things that I was learning. And I felt deeply after I started the blog that I am the biggest project I'll ever deal with before I even deal with the projects that I do at work. And it got me to a vulnerable space where I had to start exploring myself, learning about myself, my journey. I'm a writer, but a private writer. I never write for the public, but I write for healing, to heal myself. And I always say when I write or when I journal, I kind of meet myself.
Yes.
And when I write, I meet myself, and I meet myself at the deepest cause of myself. And I find the answers that I'm looking for when I'm writing. I don't necessarily have to talk to somebody else. And yeah, so I started writing my blog. It was basically, so I had been going through therapy for a couple of years, almost a decade by that time, healing from sexual trauma. And yeah, so I started writing about that. I had very different, interesting feedback from people, though I would have been okay if nobody read my thing, but there was a need for me to kind of make it public in my pages, because I think it was to destroy the myth of shame that I was carrying. And yeah, so I've been writing, and I guess that's the time that I then met Khosi. And the subjects that she writes about are very not necessarily dear to my heart, but they touched the core of me. And I love the vulnerability that she brings to her characters.
Yes.
I like the intimacy in which she describes her characters. You know, you feel yourself in there, and by intimacy, I'm not talking about the grand gestures that the character exhibit. It's just the tiny emotions that, you know, when you're talking to somebody and an emotion just flashes in their eyes, if you're not paying attention, you won't see it. She brings that in words somehow.
Yes.
And I find that very intimate and very interesting, and to a level quite healing as well.
In your introduction, you've already touched a bit on your different roles. But what I want to find out from you is we have these images or these portrayals that we have in different social interactions. So you, for example, are a mother at home, a wife at home, a sister-in-law, a daughter-in-law, and you play these many different roles. Now, how is this now different from what you bring into the people that are reading your stories? Well, which role do you then bring through when you are writing your stories?
When I'm writing, I'm not really playing any role. It just comes naturally, in the sense that there are these voices, and I'm just a vessel. I'm just conveying those voices.
Yes.
I'm just bringing them out, you know. So I get to play the many roles as well, because I think I love, I'm that kind of a person who can start a conversation with a stranger.
Yes.
Like in a bus, and we just talk. And I don't know whether it's bad or good luck, but people usually just start confiding in me, like, okay, I just met you in the bus. Why are you telling me about your husband? And that sort of a person. And I think that empathic side of me that feels was pain, the part of me, it just comes out, and I'm no longer just playing a role. I'm just now conveying. Okay, maybe that is the role that I'm playing.
Yes.
Conveying, which is so I'm just conveying what the voices are saying. I'm just you know the drum. Exactly, I'm just a drum that brings out the voices and brings out the sounds, or whatever it is. And because I always find that, humbling and sort of, fresh to say, every time someone reads my books, and then comes with a fresh perspective to the story that I hadn't even considered. And I am blessed with readers who are so, I don't know whether it's because it's the type of book I write, or the intimacy that Thuli mentioned, but some of my readers actually they go in depth with the analysis, like when they're scrutinizing the characters, when they're going into it, and then you're like, how? Oh, okay, I haven't thought of that. And I'm always embarrassed on social media when people quote me, and I'm like, which book is that?
Yes.
Is it that pipe? I'm like, no, let's call it case.
Because once you've delivered the message, you're done. That's your role. You're not meant to remember what it said.
Exactly. Even the messages that I write for them, like I like giving out personal messages, you know, and then I get a text, someone saying, you know, for me, it actually touched me because this is what I'm going. Okay, first, right?
Yeah, and these are moments where people can actually call you fraud. Like, how do you say such big words and then turn around and not remember you said them?
You don't know.
Yeah.
So I think that because I just conveyed the message, and once the message is out there, it's no longer for me.
One of my friends, my best friend is a spiritual person, Ukri, and we always talk about the spiritual calling and stuff like that, and she always says, no, just because you've got a calling doesn't mean, finally, you know, you're now one of those that beat on their drums every day and all that. Sometimes you play your roles differently, and I feel like one of your roles maybe is when you have a deep message to deliver. Some people have, I for example, I do dream.
Yes.
And sometimes I dream for a specific person or a specific event in my life. And I can just text that person and say, hey, I dreamt of you and this and that and the other, and just move on. And it will hit the mark and whatnot. But for you, your message is to the masses. It's not, you couldn't possibly have all the contacts of the people that you in quote dream about to deliver that message to. You then deliver that message in stories. In you know, like our great grandparents used to deliver their messages in fables, you know, Inganegwane and things like that. So you create your own fables and stories to deliver the message, and whoever that message is meant for will buy that book or will be drawn to that book and get it.
I agree 100%. From the time where the messages were written or were artwork in some cave to now when we can tell our own stories, I think that's part of the role that I'm trying to also establish with this series, that healing doesn't have to just be in therapy. Healing doesn't have to be sitting on a couch. You can find it in books, you can find it in music, you can find it in poetry.
You can find it in many different places,
There's really many messengers out there, and it's a great thing to really have the people that accept and actually acknowledge and embrace their calling. That is very, very good.
So can I just add something?
Yes.
As I mentioned, I'm an avid reader, and many times I do come across books, whether it's online, somebody mentioned a book, or I'm at a bookstore and I see a book and I'm drawn to it.
Yes.
I will buy it. Back in the day, I would buy it and I would feel like, now that I have it, I have to read it and finish it. I used to be the kind of person to read and finish an entire book in one go. Otherwise, I feel like I can't. But then nowadays, I've come to learn that because sometimes I feel drawn to a book, I buy it, and then when I try to read it, I don't connect with it, and then I just put it away. And then there will be a day when I'm walking across past my bookshelf, or when I'm just sitting, and that book will come to mind. And when that day comes, I will pick the book, and it might be the first 2 chapters that are pertinent to my life at that point, to help me maybe shape what is going on and structure what is going on in my life and think about it in a different way. And sometimes just the first 2 chapters, I'll pick up the book, I'll read the first 2 chapters, and it will make so much sense. And then after that, so I stop connecting. Then I put it away, and then, you know, I've called the season of my life Following the Whisper, because there's this thing that I've heard, and I truly, truly believe it. It says, when the student is ready, the teacher will be found. So when you get to, by the time I'm done with that book, even if it's 6 years later, it would have transformed my life so much.
Awesome. Oh wow. But what brings the 3 of us together today, even though Thuli has not met Busi in person, is what we call social media. Social media has played a huge role in our lives, and it has negative connotations as much as it's got a whole lot of positive stuff. I think as much as I didn't share my story, I also met Busi on Facebook, and she was writing The Harvard Wife at the time, even before the silent screams. And from her writing that story, she then became part of the group that was what we call ourselves the Strummers. And I think I fell for that young girl that was writing a story. And I've never been the person that wants to actually meet the writer. And I had been reading The Harvard Wife for a while, and one day I go to catch up on the inserts, that as we call them, and Busi has her face for the first time out there, and she's saying, "It's my birthday, say happy birthday to your admin." I'm looking at this face and thinking, my goodness, I am having sleepless nights thinking about what's her name, Lelo, and in love with Jared, and here's this little beginning thing that is writing the story. so at times, and as you were talking about listening to whispers, it's also then humbling yourself to understand that your message is not always going to come from a big voice or someone you put on a platform, but the platform that brought us all together is social media. So why did you ladies get involved in social media? Why did you sign up for whichever platform that you use, but specifically Facebook?
Before I started writing, my Facebook was like so bland. I think I'll just post, but I know I wasn't big on Facebook, whatever. And then I had actually written The Harvard Wife and finished it, right? Before I even posted the first chapter on Facebook. So a friend of mine was like, you know what, I've been reading stories on Facebook. Why don't you just post a few chapters? You know, that's how show started. That's how, so you just post a few chapters and get a feel of how people will respond to your content, so that you know whether you are, because before that I had posted a few chapters on a blog on WordPress. Response on WordPress was very slow, and it was very low as well. So then I was like, okay, let me try open the page on Facebook. You know, and a few writers like who shared it on her. Then it was like a lot of readers just logged on. So then that changed my Facebook from just being to now connecting with people with similar interests as mine, because I'd always been a bookworm, you know, and I was that person who could read up to 3 books a day, you know, when I was in high school. And so it was like that aha moment where you're like, oh, I found my people, I found my tribe. You know, it's no longer weird when I binge read on this. And it was like I found a whole new world of, the stories. There are people writing, there are people reading, there's everything that I love, you know. And then for me, that's like a pivotal moment, because then it led me to connect with people outside of the writing, with you, with Lean, with Thuli, with a lot of people. Like right now, even if you open my WhatsApp, whatever, I have so many people. Some I've never met physically, but because we chat so much, they comment on my pictures. You feel like, okay, this is now your community. When someone is telling a story of their kid, you're like, how? Okay. When someone is going through a breakup, you're like, yo, but he seems so nice, you know. It's like, okay, we are those people. We are like, and it's such that if someone no longer posts, you're like, how? Of course, is she fine where she is? I haven't seen her posting on.
Oh my gosh, I remember all of those messages. Yes.
As social media, if used correctly, it opens you up to this, because I feel like growing up, I was this girl. Yes, I was never awkward or socially awkward, because I've always been someone to speak out. But then it was taken as papa. But whenever you're friendly, papa. It was like, okay, you're too forward, you know. But then on social media, when I was that person who is forward, that person who likes engaging, when I found the people who appreciated that about me, it was like a part of me like sort of clicked. Just okay, so this is when you find people actually enjoy engaging.
Why I joined social media? Well, my reasons aren't so fancy. I joined social media many years ago. Facebook in particular, I joined it for professional reasons.
Okay.
So I remember my first professional job, well, my internship when I left. I connected with all my colleagues on Facebook, and then it went on for a while, and then I made LinkedIn more of my professional space, but then I couldn't delete people off off Facebook. But I also ran a nonprofit with friends, and it was based off Facebook. So we did a lot of our marketing on Facebook, and and as I said, when I started my blog talking about my healing, it was on WordPress, but I used to share my story on Facebook a lot. So a lot of my following on Facebook is either professional or people who are following me because of the nonprofit work I do, or many other reasons. Or when I started my blog, I used to get like over a lot of shares and over 10K hits a day, and I gained more followership of that. But I kind of found it a bit stifling because I felt like I had to protect the more mature side of me, and I'm a still human being, generally speaking. So I use my other pages, whether it's Twitter and other spaces, to be more authentic and be myself and just talk rubbish about my day. And I just like being I give commentary on life from a humorous side, kind of. So sometimes I do it on my WhatsApp. I sometimes call myself a WhatsApp content creator.
Oh yes. I'm there too. Since I stopped Facebook, I'm WhatsApp status queen now.
Get people who read my WhatsApp stories and they're like, oh, you should write a book. Oh, you should do this. Or if I don't write stories for a long time, people are like, oh, I haven't. And I'm like, so you people actually read and enjoy and you never comment. I'm not for you anymore.
I think it's always surprising when you realize how many people actually follow what you do or what you say. At times I'd look at, WhatsApp has that, bless them, for telling us who's been viewing. And you'll find that you can see 100 views for your status, but there's actually 200 people that viewed your status that have not enabled the recording of the viewing. So you never know when you're talking to people who you are impacting.
I always assume people are bored and they're just scrolling through and they end up seeing my stories. But sometimes, like, so for example, I sometimes rant hilariously about my work. And one day I was ranting about a character that I named Becky. Yeah. And I'll tell stories about Becky, and then maybe once a week or something like that. And then like I stopped talking about Becky for a long time. And then 3 months later, somebody texted me and she was like, "Oh, how is your relationship with Becky now?"
Becky with the good hair. Okay, so before we even get into much more details about what we use social media for, because I want to know the details. I just want to understand. So, Thuli, for example, I know that Busi joined social media for just presence, and she got convinced to actually put up the story. And at the end of the day, it's the stories that have then turned into books that has got us to this point. Did you start as a blogger before joining social media?
No, I started off basically as a way of keeping in contact with people.
Okay.
Yeah, so like people who are not necessarily close friends, but people that I would like to, hit up once in a while, maybe from a professional space or whatever.
Yes.
So I used to me, that was my phone book, so to speak, like where I keep my contact. But then as time went on, I did things because it's been years now. I've used it for all sorts of different things. And I think for me, my presence on social media is a bit if you see my different pages, you just wonder, is this the same person? Because Facebook was one of my first presence, social media presence. And back then there was this thing that, how you view yourself, like there was this thing that you have to portray a certain mature, responsible front of yourself on social media. Otherwise people, and bear in mind, a lot of people who were on my social media are people that I knew professionally, people I respected, people I showed a certain part of me, not other parts of me. So I felt I couldn't always be completely authentic on my pages because of that. Because people be like, oh, when they blog you and they Google you and you're looking for a job, they'll be like, oh, this one on like that kind of thing. It's so
man. Yes.
And even when I started blogging, it was difficult, really, really difficult to put myself on Facebook. I showed different parts of me in different spaces.
It totally makes sense. Okay, ladies, so what I want to know is you've now decided on a platform, you're using the platform for different reasons, but what inspired you to then engage the masses with these voices that keep ringing in your head? Let's start with Busi.
I think it's more of once you answer the call, it sort of guides you from there. It sort of then takes over, because when grandmothers speak, there's nothing you can do but listen, Yes, it is what it is. But I feel like and then became more of an engagement. As I said, I feed off the engagement. Like I enjoy the interactions. I enjoy. At first, I could respond to almost every comment. I was responding to every comment, but as my presence grew, so did my pages and the comments as well. So at times, and then I also became a mother. I also had other duties to do. So then now I really can't always interact with every comment, but I do respond to some, from time to time, and I enjoy the interactions. But I read all the comments. Like I make time to actually just sit down and go through all the comments, and so it's that engagement. I think it's nicer than because when people read your physical book, it's not always, you don't always get a response chapter by chapter. Although there are some people who call me like every chapter if something happens, and then they text me on WhatsApp, hey, why did you kill Abby? Why did you? Oh, the threats.
Oh my God,
they never learn. They keep threatening me, but they never learn that threats don't work on me. They just don't. So anyway, but yeah, so the interaction is a huge part of it, because as I said, it then becomes as if you know those people personally. It then becomes like their word matters. Whenever people tell you that, your work has become part of my routine every morning on Monday, I know that I wake up to an insert every Wednesday. So then, because I don't get paid for writing on social media, and besides the marketing, I really do enjoy the interaction. The comments, the jokes, the reading, and everything. It's just and that's why you find that there's some of my posts when I'm not posting like an insert. Most of my posts are about memes, or I'm actually making fun of them or threatening. It's always like that banter. It's always so nice, and because I think I've created a safe and respectful place. It's a respectful space, because my readers, they're not the like to insult each other or to start, they can have differing views over a character, but the way they interact is always respectful, mindful of the next person. It's always insightful as well. So I think, that's why I keep using social media. That's why I keep on writing on Facebook.
Awesome. Thuli, you blog, you share your emotions. People get to know a lot about you. You now, your experience or your views also helped become input into Busi's story. What inspires you to tell your authentic story?
Okay, so a few things. Writing and walking to me are like a way of it's progress, and it's almost like a way of ironing out my thoughts and my perspective and getting to a point where I'm like, okay, because sometimes when you're going through something or when you're thinking something, it gets so jumbled up. But when you now put it down into words, when you start writing it, you start realizing, oh, this is where I'm at. This is what I'm going through. This is where, okay. And then as I write as well, then I guess the advice that I need, or the healing the words that I need to heal me at that point start pouring into my pen, and it just comes through. And that's when I'm like, oh, so I heal myself by writing. In terms of writing publicly, so it was it's kind of different from Busi. I took a break-ish from the intense writing.
Yes.
So I used to just write for myself, right? I've got tons and tons and tons of journals in my bookcase and stuff. But I came to a point in my journey of healing from the sexual trauma that I had this intense whisper that said, you can't just write for yourself anymore. You have to bring it to public.
Yes.
And it was like, do I have to? So I remember at first, I set up a blog, which was very anonymous. You could, if you didn't know it was me, if I didn't tell you it was me, you wouldn't know it was me.
Okay.
And then I just started writing. I think after 2 weeks or so of writing, my heart was like, that's not it. That's not what we meant when we said you have to make it public. You make it properly public. So then I had to do, eventually I had to come up with a blog called thulimapi.com. At first, I was like, I remember talking to one of my close friends, and I was like, these are the feelings that I get sometimes, and I'm thinking maybe I should start writing because I'm an introvert as well. So I was like, okay, I'll start writing a blog and whatnot, and I'll share it with the people who are closest to me, who may be worried about me at this point in my life. You can read the blog and know where I'm at, or where my I promise to be. I promise to be authentic and honest in those. And they're like, yeah, cool. I did that, and something in me was like, no, that's not what we meant. So eventually, I had to take the brave thing. I have to own the story. I have to be honest, and I have to be public about it. This is no longer about just writing. It's just about, it took Busi at first talked about accepting the call. Yes. It took a long time. I'm still struggling with accepting that call. I'll be honest with you.
I get you. Yes.
So there was a lot of shame associated with me telling my story. I didn't know it was me. I didn't want, and not many people, like, you didn't have to know. But in the end, I was losing so much peace over it. And I said, I think it was on the 23rd in the night or 24th in the night. And I still remember I was in my friend's living room at about 11 p.m. And I just hit send. And I was like, that's it, that has to go. And then I pushed it to my Facebook. And in Facebook, you remember I said the people who follow me on Facebook are people I respect, are people from my professional space, people from, it's people that I really respect. It's not like people that I just chat rubbish with, so I wouldn't just want to, it felt like airing my dirty laundry. But I remember not long after when I did that, the first day when I came back to work, actually a couple of my colleagues texted me and they offered me the support. And my boss texted me and she was like, I read your story. I was really touched by it. I hope you're okay. I'm here if you need any support. And then she was like, oh my God, you're such an awesome writer. You should bring that into your career. You should see that part of you at work. You don't have, you bring words to life. So, but you don't do it at work. Why don't you do that? You should bring that into your job. And that kind of transformed my career in a sense, in a way.
Yeah.
But with telling a sensitive story like that, a lot of people resonated with my story and they shared wide, and it got beyond me. And then there were people who were not very happy with me. So I was getting a lot of hate. And the reason why I started writing, it was one part of the inspiration was, sometimes we come across stories and people are like, yo, I went through it at some point in my life, but I'm okay now.
Yeah.
And it's like an inspirational thing that, you go through hard times, but you come through and you're stronger. Look at me now. I've done this, I've done that. But nobody really takes you through the how and the what. Nobody tells you we don't talk about the process, we talk about the product a lot.
Okay. And I want us to pause a bit there because we will take the process a bit later on. Right now, I just want to know what drove you to the story. And we have that. And I think sometimes we confuse the two because inspiration is external. And it's one of the things that I had to learn because when you do story as a gift or as a profession, you got to learn the differences in words as well. So what I've found is that I can be inspired by something that I see. I can be inspired. It's an internal thing. So the processing of the event is internal. It inspires me internally. However, what inspires me could be external, right? And then there's the other word that is always confused with inspiration, which is then motivation. Now, what motivates me comes from the fact that I have an inner thing that has pushed me to do something. But when it pushes me to do something, then I need the move. Now I must get into action. So this is where motivation comes in. So now what I want to know from you ladies is, you got inspired to write your story. And it's a hard thing to put those words on paper or type them, depending on what platform you use. You then get to the point to move, to act, to actually do something about the inner voices. So what motivated you to keep it going, to keep telling your story?
When I started writing from a place of I was depressed, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It was nothing clinically proven or anything, but I was at that point in my life where I was like, my peers are getting their first jobs.
Mm-hmm.
They are doing well for themselves, and I'm stuck as a cashier at Steers. So it was one of those, is this where my life is going to be? Is this like, as someone who had always, I had a plan, that life plan to say I'm going to graduate at this age, I'm going to do this and that, get a job by this age, buy a house and a car at this age, and do this and that, And so, and most of the plan went accordingly, I was always a student who passed. I never sat for any exam twice, as that person was like, until I graduated. And then, that's where you get to know that at times we plan and God laughs. I think that was hard for me. So when I started writing, her educational background, whatever, was sort of the person I aspired to be in a way. But then, in as much as I aspired to be that person, she sort of took her own life, her own identity. You might have this that you want, but is your life going to be perfect even then? Even when you're rich, even when you have that degree, even when you have the job, everything, is your life going to be perfect then? I didn't expect people to be touched by the story as much as they were. I didn't expect, I think there was a scene where Umbomi is fighting with the Jared because she's refusing to acknowledge that Udayo raped her.
Oh, yes.
And that chapter, I got a lot of inboxes from women going like, you know what? I never wanted to admit it, but I think my husband raped me too, when you speak of it like this, it makes me realize that it was rape. Know? And so it made me aware that, advocacy, activism will not always, I don't know whether it's your Thuli saying that there are many threads to either spirituality or activism. There are some people who are going to fight in the trenches of activism, who are going to stand in court, who are going to do this and that. But then this is my threat to say is the space that I'm opening up for those women to realize this is what is in me. This is the hurt that is in me. This is the part of me which is hurting. My job is just for them to convey that message, to convey that pain, or to put their pain, to give validance to their pain, like to validate it in a way. When you write about Nomaswazi cutting herself so that she feels some pain to take her mind off the mental pain or whatever, and then it sort of says, it clicks to say, this is what I do, and it might not be the advocacy that I saw for myself, it might not be the activism that I thought I was going to do, but it has a wider reach than I thought. So maybe this is what I should be doing, When I started writing, it was going to use this as a stepping stone to get connections and get a job. Like, that was the plan. So now that in the public's eye, I'm going to ask people to help me find a job or whatever. But then in the end, it now became like, but you already have a job. And this job is just as important,
Is the one you think you're going to find.
I read this other meme, whereby, who's this guy who writes comics? What's his name? Stan Lee. He was like, he always thought that being a comic writer wasn't important until he realized that people actually need entertainment, people need that outlet. So for me as well, and it's also that question that you always get, so are you looking for a job? And those subtle hints from your parents there's this link from universities and
Yes.
what. There's this and that. Are you going to do it? Are you going to? So I reached a realization that no, this is actually my calling. This is important as well. People need this outlet. It's always so interesting when I get someone saying, I'm from Kenya, I'm from Uganda, I'm from Texas. I'm like, wow, I get all those different people, some of them, some of the numbers that come to my WhatsApp, I'm like, +81, I'm like, where is this from? Someone from China, someone from, and they're like, because this is the thing that we don't realize that pain is universal,
Yes.
so is healing. So at times, even if a character is going through something that might touch someone else, even though that person is a different, it doesn't matter. Like I remember when I was writing Sunshine and Shadows, no, Rupees and Rain, about my arrest with Ruby. So I got this inbox from a lady. She said she was from Lesotho and her family were arrested, those political arrests.
Yes.
And she's been exiled from her country since then. She's been for over 20 years following that arrest. And so she was saying, for obvious reasons, I couldn't share that story or her name, but I was like, wow, from this is just me writing, but she was like, you know what, you've made me realize that those wounds hadn't healed yet, that I hadn't really come to terms with what I experienced back then. And I needed this reminder to open up those wounds so that I can properly, heal them. It's such small interactions, it's such small, whenever someone reaches out and tells me that, what, I went through something and this, what you wrote here reminded me of that, or maybe, so that for me, that is what has kept me going. That validation first and foremost, and also the fact that it matters to those people, and it matters to that extent, so that it made me realize this is the calling, you answered it, and now you have to carry it forward, because then now people are counting on you to
Yes.
it on, people are counting on you to keep on voicing their pain and helping them heal. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thuli.
As I mentioned before, my story is not fiction, so I'm writing about the process while I am in the process of healing from sexual trauma. So I talk about the struggles that I'm having at that particular moment. I talk about the mental struggles, like the things, the limiting beliefs that I have, etc., etc. And I'm a reluctant writer. I would rather be writing about, puppies and fictional stories, but apparently that is not my path in life. My path is to write about my journey, and I don't like it because it's painful and it brings out a certain level of vulnerability that you are exposing to strangers and tens of thousands of people that are reading it, and they judge you and whatnot and whatnot. So I got to a point where there were certain people, and part of my writing has reduced the shame that I felt around my story. But unfortunately, at some point in life, there's people who benefit from your shame, and people who benefit from the parts of you that are unhealed. So that when you start taking the steps to get to that healing, it doesn't go well with them. So I went through a process when a lot of people got angry with me. A lot of people told me all sorts of rubbish, and they publicly slated me and all that. And I was so angry. I stopped writing for a couple of years. I am not yet writing publicly anymore because of that anger. I love to say, I'm motivated by the people that as I said, I do get a wide reach. I get people that I've known ages, that I haven't spoken for ages, calling me to say, oh my God, your story, I need help with this. Can you help me with this? What do you think I should do? And then I have people who call me and they're like, oh, I was saying, there's this girl that called me. She was like, oh my God, you're bringing up a memory that I think I had forgotten. I didn't realize that I was raped. Oh my God, what should I do? Things like that. And I do get people who are like, oh, my aunt has gone through what you went through and she doesn't want to acknowledge it. I sent her your links and she's getting to that place of wanting to heal, etc., etc. Those things are motivating as it is, but I think I come from a more selfish point of view in the sense that I've always needed to write for the sense of peace, for my own sake of peace. Because if I don't, it just keeps niggling at me until I do it.
I totally get